Okay, hello. I'm Emily Beck. This is Theresa Berger. We're both from the University of Minnesota. I'm a curator at the Wangenstein Historical Library of Biology and Medicine, and Theresa is the head of digital library services. So last year at Leeds, during a Birds of a Feather session with Richard Palmer and Luca Carini, we kicked off a IIIF conversation about how we might make interactive digital surrogates of movable books. So you might be wondering, aren't all books interactive? Well, yes, they are. But some have more bits and pieces that do more things than your typical flipping of the page. Things like flaps that are attached with hinges, volvels that rotate, and pull tabs that create even more complex movements. Now that we're an official community group, we're continuing to pick away at this big question, and we're here to let you all know what we've been up to and see who else wants to be involved. Right now, for objects such as flap anatomies or volvels, many institutions display before and after photos or sometimes videos or animations of a staff member demonstrating the interactive features of 2D objects. While helpful to illustrate the movement of the object, videos don't allow users to interact with the movements themselves. Our big picture goal, then, is a way to create, or ways to create, interactive texts that have interactive digital surrogates using tools that are broadly accessible to institutions with a broad range of resourcing capabilities without the need for ongoing special project funding. To work toward this, we're working on creating a common vocabulary so curators, digitization professionals, and programmers all know what we're talking about. With these complex materials, we're gathering user needs through a survey, and we're developing use cases for different kinds of movable texts and identifying gaps in current IIIF specifications. So as we've been thinking about the opportunity for interactive digital surrogates, many people have asked, why bother? It's a lot of work, it's too much to change, and how could it really be worthwhile? So I'll try to explain, and because I'm a historian of recipes, of course I will use a recipe, but not a cookbook recipe like we usually talk about here. This is a 17th century recipe. Historical scholars are increasingly turning to performative methods of research, teaching, and outreach as our fields grow in understanding of the experiential information produced by physically interacting with objects. Consider the differences, for example, between reading a recipe for making a pie and actually making a pie. So this is like I said, 17th century recipe for making a pie. It's in the welcome. And making the dish is really the best way to understand what you don't know about the embodied knowledge of the people who wrote and used the recipe. Interacting with the physical items indicated in the text reveals, or doesn't reveal, both the process and the objective. I have made this before. I'm sorry the image is so blurry. It was before I knew about IIIF. So when I made this, I was thinking things like, how many people is this supposed to feed? Because it calls for like 25 pounds of breadcrumbs. What's the difference between ginger and fine ginger? And what am I supposed to do with the paste? It just says like, make a paste. Well, then what? So that is what I ended up with. My family didn't really appreciate it, but I thought it was interesting. But really, I ended up with a better understanding of the embodied knowledge of the authors and users. So where am I going with this? This document doesn't need interactive 2D, but I think it does bring us to the question that usually comes after the why bother. Why not make a video or a GIF? Part of it is that we know that historical disciplines are increasingly turning to research of physical materials as objects, many for the reasons outlined by Sven Dupré et al., who wrote in the introduction to their 2020 volume, Reconstruction, Replication, and Reenactment in the Humanities and Social Sciences, quote, performative methods are increasingly playing a prominent role in research into historical production processes, materials, and bodily knowledge and sensory skills, and in forms of education and public engagement in classrooms and museums. This has also been demonstrated by successful research projects and collaboratives, such as Pamela Smith's Making and Knowing project at Columbia and the Artechne project at Utrecht University. So basically, what I'm trying to hit on, or what we're trying to hit on, is the importance of interactivity for this subset of material that has hinges, wheels, pull tabs, and more. Just as historical recipes and other documents that are instructional benefit from analysis that is predicated on physical engagement, movable books also require interaction in order to be understood. We've had focus groups, individual interviews with users, and are currently doing a user survey that have made us feel confident that knowledge that interactivity exists and actual interactivity are not the same for these materials, and that non-user driven movement is not sufficient to understand these objects. We finally sent out our user survey last week to gather some more information from other folks about their hopes and dreams and concerns about interactive digital surrogates of movable text. So it's gone out so far to a few groups, the Teaching with Primary Sources Collective, librarians and museum professionals in the history of health sciences, and the Movable Book Society. And we'll keep sending it around and hoping for responses through the end of June. The people who have responded so far represent a really diverse audience, which is exciting. It's been filled out by paper engineers, book artists, curators, conservators, historians, and collectors. We ask a lot of questions, but the particularly relevant ones right now are related to what folks feel like are the most important capabilities for interactive digital surrogates. Things may change by the end of the month, but it feels at this point pretty clear that this broader group agree that the movement and interaction are critical. Non-interactive digital surrogates inhibit viewers from understanding the whole meaning of the material, which doesn't just exist in the text or the imagery, but in the movement itself.
Thanks, Emily. So you may be thinking, how is this relevant to me? I don't have a Vauvel or a flap anatomy, or I'm not a historian of cool 17th century recipes. But we bet that you actually do have interactive texts in your collections. Although edge cases keep coming up in the group, there are three main interaction types that we've identified as needing a little extra love from the IIIF community. The first type of interaction you see here is one that we know basically is everywhere: hinges. For example, flap anatomies are a kind of texts that we started this project with. They look like paper dolls that you can dissect by lifting off layers of skin, organ systems, and bones. Although these objects can be extremely complex, they operate functionally with a simple mechanism, a hinge. Hinges are just a point where a piece of material, usually paper or cloth, is attached to the page and loose most of the way so that user can lift the piece up off the page and turn it over about 180 degrees. Pictured is one of our flap anatomies at the University of Minnesota, and it's been digitized to display before and after views of a single flap. The anatomy features a male figure whose abdomen lifts up to display internal organs. We've added a red box over the hinged piece of each of these items to help show you and visualize the interaction. Similarly, the carbolic advertisement that you see there has a flap that folds down to make the piece longer and to show you that this salve will make your skin more beautiful. When we simplify the movement in this way, a world of hidden interactive text collections is revealed. Scrapbooks, folded plates, and ephemera like these trade cards are great examples of the hinged materials that we're thinking about. The next type of interaction that we've identified is rotation. So objects with rotational or circular movement, including Vauvels, which are paper charts generally consisting of stacked or intersecting circles that move up to 360 degrees, both clockwise and counterclockwise. These rotational mechanisms appear in all kinds of texts, such as mathematical tools, prognosticating astrological tools, and perpetual calendars. Some of these items are fairly simple, with one wheel that turns on top of a static page, and others are more complex with layered wheels that have windows cut out to reveal something underneath them. So they're kind of shifting and moving around together. This one from the New York Academy of Medicine has 4 different parts or pieces of movement. One thing I really like about these Vauvels actually is that many of the examples we see across collections have different layers or missing pieces that have been lost over time. So there's a great use case not only for interactivity, but also reunification when it comes to these items. The third and final movement we've identified, for now at least, is what we are calling linear movement. This form of interaction often comes from pull tab mechanisms. Readers pull down or up or across using a tab that causes a corresponding element within the book to move. Makers like Lothar Meggendorfer, who made children's books in the late 19th century, made all kinds of pull tab-based paper mechanisms that paper engineers are still trying to figure out. Collectors, book artists, conservationists, and curators often work together with broken copies of these texts to better understand these complex mechanisms. So for example, collector Larry Seidman, someone we know, recently gave several broken Meggendorfers to the University of Wisconsin-Madison faculty member Julie Chen to dissect with her students in an artist book class to learn how the mechanisms worked. This is a great example, I think, of where the interdisciplinary collaboration is really key to the type of work that we're doing in the group. The meld of makers, researchers, curators, librarians, digitization professionals, and developers is necessary to make sure that whenever a fully interactive Meggendorfer digital surrogate finally exists, it actually does what it should in the way that it should. Transitioning a bit though, we're not coming out of nowhere with this. I think it's important to acknowledge this part. We know that IIIF has been thinking about some of these things before. We have recipes that acknowledge fold-outs and flaps. We have multiple painted resources, and we have behaviors like choice. Our group, though, is exploring user needs in various communities to confirm two things. One, do these recipes need any changes or enhancements to ensure that the types of interaction and movement we've identified are formally and correctly represented? And two, how can viewers help demonstrate these properties and this interactivity better? So this is also a call to you viewer managers and devs out there to think about what you can offer here, because we promise your researchers, your curators, and your audiences will want it. We don't have the answers to these questions, not yet, although it sounds like, based on yesterday, our friends at Getty and Dan Brennan may have some developments on this front. We're excited to hear about that. But to that end, we've also been building various interactive demos with IIIF objects to help us both test with end users to make sure we're understanding their needs, and also to help us conceptualize what these potential movements may look like when we move from a community group to, say, a technical standards group. So just a couple of these. And this is where we're going to test my memory. This particular demo, made by interactive 2D group member Patrick Cuba at St. Louis University, illustrates the type of interactivity that we're thinking about. The example utilizes the before and after views of a scrapbook page with a flap that opens and closes, as I'm doing here with the slider, and closes on a single defined line. To do this, the demo is using annotations, which we called out as hinge axis and circular region, as well as some CSS magic to animate the circular flap flipping between the closed and open states. And we will post a link or post the slides so you guys can play with this and do it yourself. This example, made by 2D group member Scott Lawan, who's here with us today, takes Patrick's example and gives it deep zoom capability, which, come on, it's IIIF. We all know everybody likes deep zoom. This one I think has been really important as we sort of show and shop this around with curators and users, just to explain the value and the magic of IIIF. If we can combine these things together, I think we're going to get something really special. So, still have that nice fade and open and close there. Hold please. Ah. Sorry. Hold on. Get me into presenter mode. Thank you. Yep. Okay. Well, here's the best thing. That was like the penultimate slide. So just to kind of close this out, though, if some of this theory that Emily discussed piqued your interest, or if you have other examples or edge cases that you think you might want to apply, or if you want to just look at more flappy doodads with us, please, we'd love to have you join us as part of the interactive 2D group. There are also a few specific ways that you can get involved if interested. So complete our survey. That's that QR code there. Emily showed you some of the preliminary responses. We'd love to get this shopped out and shared out more. Right now it's geared a little bit more towards researchers and creators, but we absolutely welcome all of you to complete it, and again, help us share it with your colleagues, again, and your curators, etc. You can also add examples to our spreadsheet. Slides will be posted later, and you can click on that link. And these can be examples of interactive objects you already know about online, or objects that you'd like to see be more interactive. Also, join our Moving Books Slack channel. This is confusing. We are called the Interactive 2D group, but our channel is #MovingBooks. That's because that's how we started. So please join it. There's a lot of great people on there. We got some really good conversations going. And last but not least, join a monthly call. We are currently meeting the third Tuesday of the month, but we're thinking about changing the time we meet so that more folks can join. So please look out for a scheduling poll on that. And big shout out to our current collaborators. Some of them are listed there. We're really grateful to have you all with us, and I think it's been really exciting to see how the group's developed over the last year, and so we're looking forward to the next steps. Thanks.
Thank you. Those flaps were lovely. On the Moving Books Interactive 2D, there's this famous quote, there's 2 hard problems in computer science. I always forget the second one, but the first one is naming things, so that's... right, hello. We are going to talk about Micrio, and maybe it can do some flappable things as well. We want to give you a brief overview of how it went from a project to a venture to an open source project, partly. I'm Erwin, this is Marcel. In the Netherlands, over from Tokyo. We're not together often, so I'm really relishing this quality time. And of course, we're here with you all and happy to be at the IIIF conference in sunny Leiden. We have 4 things on our agenda. In the next 15 minutes, we'll give you a brief timeline of Micrio history. Sorry for the people who were at the showcase. You've seen this part already. Everything else is new, I promise. What presentation formats we currently support and maybe want to add to that in the future. Speaking of future, how we try to future-proof Micrio as a service, and some intel on Micrio's viewer, which is the open source part, as promised in the presentation title. Quick overview, Micrio, we try to sort of present the service in 2 main parts for people who don't know IIIF as deeply as you all do. We always say there's a show part, there's a tell part. The show part is just getting your high resolution imagery out there. So Micrio is a cloud-based IIIF image server, and it has a viewer, of course, to show those images, and it can be extensively embedded in however way you see fit in your own projects. Kinds of images we do, Marcel will take a further deep dive into it. Regular 2-day off-the-mark ultra-resolution images, 360-degree images, serialized images or albums or books with flaps perhaps, and spinnable images as a recent addition. And then in the telling part is about sort of making the stories that connect those images or series or spaces, really make them shine by telling the stories about them. So we have an entire, what we like to think of as a user-friendly storytelling dashboard, where we have markers, or in IIIF parlance, your annotations. We do media embeds, positional audio, scripted camera tours, make it crazy, you name it. In order to prevent any confusion, so the image server part is a subscription-based service, all of the storytelling subscription-based service, and the image viewer that can be extended is the part that we open sourced. So that can be used at leisure in your own projects with your own IIIF server at choice. Just to give you a quick overview, this is the dashboard as it is. So it's it has folders. You drop in your images. We do the tiling. We do the maintenance of it for the techies or the enthusiasts. The entire infrastructure is in Cloudflare, which is a US-based service, but you can host it locally if you so prefer. And so it has various ways of uploading. This is the browser-based one, where you can see those different image types that you can upload in the browser or via one of the tools. And there's more to it, but we won't get into all that. if you want to know more, we do have a workshop. Maggie and I are giving that tomorrow morning in The Hague. If you haven't signed up yet, do it now. Good. History. Marcel and I and Maggie all work for a Dutch software agency, a digital product studio that's called Q42. And at Q42, we do bespoke projects. You can, hire smart people that build things that try to amaze you. And besides projects, we also have a couple of ventures. So we call this is sort of we don't manage products ourselves, but occasionally we do. And so this is a number of businesses, initiatives, things that came out of some of the projects we did. And the others don't matter too much, but just to sort of see where this comes from. So Micrio started as a project, something that we needed to support a project in 2015, which is, for those who count, 10 years ago. I should have put in a birthday cake emoji because we do see this conference as our kind of 10th year celebration. Yay, us. And immediately after that, hey, Microsoft Update Assistant, we don't need you. David Haskia, he's still not in the room. I've shown this slide 70 times, and I'm still waiting for the day where David is actually in the room when I do this. Right after the launch, was like, hey, what about IIIF? And it took us a couple of years, but we did make it fully IIIF compatible. We added more IIIF support over the years, and then the second part of, or the first part actually, of David's tweet, last year we also open sourced part of the stack. So 10 years later, we can say, yes, David, both of those things are true. We started, so we like to think of Micrio as a bit of a Swiss Army knife, toolbox, smorgasbord, however, whatever image you see fit, but that we try to make applicable to a wide range of user types. So it really started as a project for our public broadcasters, educational broadcast service, together with museums. This was the Rijksmuseum, which many of you here know. So that kind of triangle of education, broadcasting, museums was really the sort of where it started and where a lot of our projects still reside. But we've seen that expand over the years with publishers of sorts, municipalities, NGOs, political parties, I won't tell you which ones, libraries, film festivals, space agencies, and name whatever craziness you want. We're always, happy to welcome more. And so I'll give the reins to Marcel for part 2 of the presentation.
Thank you. As Erwin just told, Micrio was born inside we call ourselves a tech agency, so we really pride ourselves on delivering really, really high quality user experiences. Micrio started as a customer project in 2015. Perhaps you know this painting and maybe even the project. This was before Micrio met IIIF. Everything I'm going to show you about each project, I can talk at least 8 hours, so I'm going to really compact it for you. For this, the user experience was vital. This was a public project. It was 500 years since the birth or death of Jeroen Bosch, who lived in the Netherlands. This was an extremely high-resolution painting, which was available on Wiki Commons, and they wanted to add storytelling to it. Like, you see all these clickable markers, but actually there is also an audio tour that takes you through the painting. Special music was composed to play in layers based on where you look. It's full of sound effects, positional audio. So it's not just the pixels you are seeing, it's really the story being told. It was very, very important. Back then, 2016 and before, there weren't really high-performance viewers for the web already, and one of the kind of demands of our customer was it has to work on an iPad first generation, which is a very limited hardware. So we had the technical challenge of making this painting available to people who are on flaky Wi-Fi and with very bad hardware. The result was, I'm very happy with it, and from this project, Micrio was born, because after this project, we were approached by multiple parties, and a lot of more projects came out of that. I'm only going to show you the different types of presentations you can make in Micrio. A few years later, Rijksmuseum approached us saying, hey, we want to make a virtual 360 tour. So they worked together with a photographer who created beautiful 360 photography. And we put this into Micrio. So Micrio is also a 360 viewer. And you can go from space to space, but also all the paintings are clickable. And there is an audio tour again, which takes you through all the area. So we applied the same storytelling principles to a different format of images. Again, a few years later, we kind of went recursive because we created an interactive grid for a traveling exhibition about all the works of Johannes Vermeer, which started in Rijksmuseum. We created an online interactive. This grid that you see is actually one Micrio experience, and the grid is fully dynamic. So, and each of these paintings are their full resolution IIIF based works. This is like a very cross-reference tours from painting to painting, going split screen, showing 3 panels, 2 panels, 1 panels, going back to the main grid. Everything is fully interactive. This is something that's really a technical pride of ours. This is also the same Micrio JavaScript viewer, which is now open sourced. More recently, we started working with a fashion institute. I think already earlier you might have heard from the name Modemuse. They're a Dutch consortium who are digitizing classical and modern fashion objects. They have been researching very, very long. Can we do 3D scanning? Can we do this? Can we do that? They finally settled for photography from all angles, so they have very high resolution photography from each object, 72 angles. So what we created is a seamless experience where you can zoom in, rotate, and still annotate it with hotspots, annotations, and have a tour through them. You can work with this in the same dashboard as the original dashboard for the 2D images. So Micrio became more and more and more complex. I was really happy yesterday to see the announcement of the Presentation API 4.0. I'm really looking forward to connecting these kind of objects even better, because already these are fully IIIF compatible. However, the rotation logic was not yet, I think, available inside IIIF. So as soon as I get home, I'm gonna check out the IIIF API 4.0, and I would love to be able to present all these objects using this API. Last but not least, we are getting more and more users of Micrio that have very, very large image collections, including books, of course. Already, Micrio supported creating albums and multi-image presentations and stuff like that, but we are seeing more and more books, and we're like, okay, we already have the infrastructure, we have a really high-performant viewer, so we have a few CPU cycles left, and the existing book viewers online, they are kind of everything flat, which is of course awesome, but we decided to add a little bit more fun. Just to show you, we created this very quickly. This is a IIIF book. You can set the light settings. I just put it to candlelight right now, so if you want, you can read a book in candlelight. So this is a fully IIIF downloaded book. It has a manifest. I can just add to the URL. I can add / manifest.json. I get the full correct manifest for this book. But we just decided to have some fun with it to really allow people to have like a more tactile experience. This also works on touch devices. You could just grab the page on the top right and let me see. I don't see this one. And again, and that's kind of our pride. This is like a technological. This works very, very well. You don't see it downloading anything. It uses all the existing optimizations of the Micrio viewer. That's not us. I know this tab. Sorry. Yep. And all of this, all the things that you see, all the projects, is the same Micrio viewer, and that is the part that we open sourced last year. I'm going to give it back to Erwin right now. We're going to say a little bit about open sourcing, but next is future proofing.
Yeah. Just to call out the elephant in the room, I don't know who else has OCD here and is really annoyed by the Microsoft update, but has the same anxiety about touching that button because you won't know what it's going to do to Kaylin's computer. All right. That's set aside. We're all technology people here. It's fine. Yeah, we're a project studio. Micrio is a service, and of course, for many of the institutions, organizations that we work with and for, we want to be able to like look into the future and give some stability to them. First and foremost, all the information that people have. I mean, we show collections, we don't own them, we're not a dam system, we're really the presentation layer for collections. If people want to export their storytelling layers, they can do that as JSON, so you're never locked in. That's not anything we want, but we do want to sort of ensure that Micrio has a long life and the projects in it have a long life. I already gave you a bit of that overview of the types of users that we have, and I wanted to quickly link them to the types of users with maybe the types of activities that they do. So we have a number of like smaller organizations, individuals, freelancers that really just use Micrio to showcase their high-res images. We also have institutions, organizations that have reams and reams of paper and images and want to upload them in bulk. And I'll talk a bit about connections in a bit. Where we really want to dig in is about the gold, which isn't the objects or properties themselves maybe, but all of the stories around them. And over the years, through these various projects, we've been adding on story formats and story capabilities to Micrio built in. But where we really get happy is where it's complex. I'm saying happy, I still have a little bit of PTSD from the Vermeer project, but that may be me. But when we can really push the envelope, like what is possible with the web, what is possible within a browser, what is possible today with the technology advances that we have, and of course all these stories and knowledge, human knowledge that we have. So if you have something, interactive books where you go like, this is too crazy, then please come to us because we'd like a challenge. There's a couple of connectors. So going back a little bit to this sort of how do you get your high-res collection in Micrio, there's tooling. Right now there's one. So it's not it's free advertising, but if there's any DAM providers in the room, we'd like to talk because I'm really happy that PhotoWare offers Micrio as an extension layer. So people who use PhotoWare, I think there's currently 3 institutions that use Micrio and PhotoWare in that way, where they can just directly publish to Micrio their collection from their DAM system. So that really helps, and then immediately they have sort of knowledge about where their images live online within their DAM system. So that's nice. Secondly, a sort of a package deal. This is another. It's an initiative that we do that came out of 2 Dutch museums, both residing in Haarlem. The Tylers Museum, Frans Hals Museum, is sort of to give how do you say it? Like a very customizable museum website with all the things that most museums share. You need some information, you need some collection information, but you also want to do some storytelling. And so Micrio comes packaged in this platform that we use currently for a number of Dutch museums, and that we're also keen to see, if there's other museums out there that can use this kind of mid-priced version of a website where it's, it's not off the shelf like a WordPress or a Drupal instance, but it does use a lot of shared functionality, such as Micrio. If you want to see more storytelling showcases, we really like our showcase page. There's 75 projects highlighted, and you can filter down on them to get a sense of what's there. And we're both in the IIIF Slack, so you can find us there as well.
Kind of final words about open sourcing, because nowadays open source is kind of why aren't you open source? But like 10 years ago, that was kind of still a discussion. Of course, more and more institutions, they prefer open source, not only for archival reasons, of course. So this was one of the reasons why we went, why we kind of took the effort of open sourcing. Again, the Micrio team is a very small team. We don't have an online community because mostly we are doing customer projects. But throughout exploring IIIF, Micrio is getting more and more and more IIIF compatible, and we are seeing the benefits of that. So it was for us also the logical step to at least the viewer component to open source it. You could do anything with it. It's a totally open license. And it's also a kind of a matter of pride, It's a showcase for us, showing the people, hey, this is how you can use WebGL, WebAssembly, whatever, how you can use the latest technologies and bandwidth optimizations and stuff like that. So it's really like showing the effort that went into making things look very easy and very accessible, but of course everybody knows that it's like an iceberg under the water, and this opens also from Micrio an open roadmap towards further IIIF integrations. Like I just said, the presentation manifest 4.0 with the 3D, but also book annotations and stuff like that. Because the book I just showed, every page can be fully annotated and stuff like that. We still have to implement it in that viewer. We have it in a different one, which is just old-fashioned 2D. But anyway, it's kind of a roadmap and it's growing towards each other. So going from the really, really high fidelity web experience still being 100% compatible with IIIF, and kind of our next internal step is adjusting our internal model to just use native IIIF annotations and stuff like that. So that is, I really love that. It's kind of like our mind baby, and now we see the rest of the community that you have already also thought about exactly the same things that we were working on. This is our open source URL, but you can find it also, of course, on the Micrio website. Come say hello. This is the team. I'm Marcel. This is Erwin. That's Maggie over there. And also Helene, she was there here yesterday. She's not here today, but she's also part of Q42, and she knows most of you, I believe, as does Erwin. Thank you very much.
The computer. The plan was absolutely not to use my computer today, and I would rather invite all of you to come into my home and search all of the drawers and closets than you look at my desktop. So yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Great. Thanks for the opportunity to present. Appreciate your indulgence with my Sydney accent. I'm afraid we're all stuck with my A's. Yeah, they're hardwired. Okay. So, Systemik has been around for 35 years as an IT consulting group. And over the last 5 years or so, we've morphed into a digital humanities lab. And we develop and support a range of open source DH platforms. We built Glycerine for its research affordances, for its curatorial application in the GLAM sector, and for its educational potential. So our design brief was to build a comprehensive workbench for researchers and curators that requires no IIIF skills at all. I'll focus today on a cluster of features, annotation sets and annotation templates, which support sophisticated scholarly and curatorial use cases. Just the tiniest bit of history. We built a prototype in 2022, then developed in 2023 with funding support from the Australian Research Data Commons. In the last 2 years, we've radically expanded the suite from a researcher workbench to a modularised framework for institutional implementation. And our roadmap for this year will focus on integrating AI into our workflows. So, Glycerine components are Workbench, the workflow interface, Viewer, which is our open source IIIF viewer, Glycerine Viewer, Glycerine Server, which is the back-end data model and image server, and Editor, which is our app for workflow integration. And we've released a WordPress plugin and an Omeka S module so that you can publish your annotated images easily on websites. What I'll do is introduce Workbench and Viewer just quickly, and then come back and expand on annotation sets and templates. So I'll start with Glycerine Workbench and do a very brief walkthrough of the foundational workflows. So what you see on screen is that I have the image Gandhara collection selected, and I could go into any of the 4 image sets and start working on the annotations. Of course, I can add a new collection. I can add a new image set to that collection with options to upload or link to images and to import from a manifest. I can then go in and start creating my annotations for that image with the annotation tools. I can then start creating it, for the annotation tools. I can then go in and I can tag an annotation with terms from scholarly vocabularies. I can then share the collection with a collaborator, and I can publish the annotated images. So I've just given you a very, very brief walkthrough of those foundational workflows. Easy to start a collection, add your images, add an annotation set, annotate the thing, and then publish it. Okay. Now our open source viewer supports the IIIF presentation API. We've looked at 4 and don't see any issues for us, but we'll bring out an update on that later on this year. And manifests built with Glycerine or other compliant tools. So it's been developed with Vue 3 framework, and we think it's got quite an elegant interface and provides a comprehensive annotation feature set. Our focus is to build out annotation use cases for galleries, libraries, and museums. It's been opened up on GitHub for community collaboration since its inception, Glycerine Viewer. So, of course, one can click intuitively around the image for annotations of each of the components and then drill down from captions and descriptions to elite scholarship. So one can click on tags that have been applied. In this case, they're from a specialist Gandharan art vocabulary. One can show notes. In this case, these are footnotes from previous scholarship. One can use a range of filters to display in multiple languages. I can show just mine or my collaborators' annotations as well. I can filter levels or layers of annotation sets, and even implement a containment hierarchy. One can toggle between a default view and a table view. The annotations really as accessible data. Back. So what I'll do now is walk through our annotation template feature. This is not really technical, it's conceptual. I'm going to touch on some of the IIIF manifest stuff, but not going to get into anything technical. So, image annotation is a powerful method for cultural institutions to document and interpret and activate their collections. However, contemporary curatorial and research use cases require a sophisticated and flexible framework for implementing layers of annotations configured for diverse objectives and diverse audiences, not just pop-up notes. So, annotation sets in Glycerine provide the capability to manage layers of annotations for different audiences. Our annotation templates feature provides the capability to define configurable sets of fields, text, dates, control vocabularies, rich text and media, and apply them to particular annotation sets or indeed to individual annotations. So permutations of annotation sets and templates support the implementation and publishing of any number of distinct presentations from the same manifest. So one can define distinct annotation schemas, for instance, one for iconographic description, another for transcribing and translating inscriptions, and yet another for material characteristics or for aesthetics. I'll briefly walk through how our templates are created in Glycerine Workbench and their rendering in Glycerine Viewer. I should point out that we've developed our templates to be web annotation protocol compliant and in a way that other IIIF compliant viewers can display them as well, so not locked in any way to Glycerine. So looking at annotation templates, this is from the Workbench. As you can see, we've got a range of built-in default templates, the top 3, that provide for detailed scholarly annotation through to very simple notes. One can then create one's own custom templates specialised for different collections and audiences. So one can create groups that correspond to tabs on the annotation UI. One can add any permutation of fields of different types to those groups. So in this really simplified flowchart, one can see how custom templates have been applied to different annotation sets to create a range of different research and gallery experiences for this single image. Built-in templates have been used to generate multiple scholarly views. Gallery templates have been configured to generate general and specialist exhibitions. Textual templates have been configured for detailed analysis of the words and syllables on the inscription at the base of the piece. So, on our website, under Implementation, you'll find an Annotations Templates page where you can view all these permutations later. We've got a demo set up there of all these things. So you can see scholarly presentations with footnotes and semantic tags. You can easily switch between them and display just the features instead. You can switch between gallery and exhibition presentations that provide autoplay and rich embedded multimedia. You can switch between specialised textual presentations that support detailed philological research. Okay, so Glycerine organises annotations into annotation sets. So conceptually, an annotation set represents a coherent interpretive layer, a cultural layer, a scholarly layer, a teaching layer, or a community contribution layer. Within the IIIF presentation model, each annotation set is implemented as an annotation collection. The annotation collection acts as the persistent container representing the complete interpretive layer across that manifest. However, IIIF attaches annotations at a canvas level. For that reason, Glycerine breaks each annotation collection into a series of annotation pages, one annotation page for each canvas that contains annotations from that set. These annotation pages are embedded directly within the relevant canvas using the standard IIIF annotations property. A single canvas can therefore contain multiple annotation pages belonging to different annotation collections, allowing multiple interpretive layers to coexist on the same image. Each annotation page also includes a part of relationship pointing back to its parent annotation collection. And that allows viewers and external systems to reconstruct the complete annotation set across the manifest. So structurally, annotation sets are implemented as annotation collections. Annotation collections are divided into canvas-level annotation pages, and annotation pages are attached directly to the canvas. The result is a model supporting layered interpretation, scalable annotation management, filtering within viewers, and stable external referencing of annotation sets across institutional systems. So this is the last piece of heavy lifting. Annotation templates provide the structural model governing how annotations are created, validated, and presented within an annotation set. Where annotation sets organise interpretive layers, annotation templates define the internal structure of the annotations themselves, including tabs, fields, control vocabularies, media types, and editing behaviours. So collaborators configure these templates within Glycerine Workbench using a visual template editing interface that I showed before. The template configuration is then stored in Glycerine server through its API layer. The server exposes these template definitions as JSON LD configurations, allowing the same template specification to be consumed consistently by both Glycerine Editor and Glycerine Viewer. And the JSON LD template spec, we've already published that on GitHub, so that's open for others to use as well. Within Glycerine Editor, the template renders dynamically as a structured annotation form. This provides annotators with a controlled and consistent editing environment organised around configurable tabs and fields rather than a free-form text entry. The resulting annotation data is then stored separately in Web Annotation Protocol format. And again, the annotation data specification is also published openly on GitHub. So at presentation time, Glycerine Viewer retrieves both the annotation data and the associated template configuration from Glycerine Server. The viewer then uses the template configuration to theme and structure the display of annotations consistently across the interface. Other IIIF viewers can still display the underlying annotation data because the annotations remain compliant web annotations. However, those viewers can't reproduce the rich structural presentation that we can with Glycerine at the moment. Okay, so to sum all this up, GLAM initiatives increasingly need to support multiple forms of interpretation across distinct audiences: curators, researchers, educators, students, and public contributors. Glycerine addresses this through annotation sets and annotation templates. Annotation sets allow institutions to maintain separate interpretive layers within a single IIIF manifest. Annotation templates provide structured, reusable data models tailored to each audience and workflow, ensuring consistency, metadata integrity, and alignment with institutional standards while allowing different voices and interpretive approaches to coexist without conflict or duplication. So that's basically it. I was going to introduce what we're doing with Image AI, but I think we'll leave that for another day. Plenty of time. We have integrated Image AI into Workbench so that when you put a bounding box around a component, Image AI goes and shrinks it down, does a beautiful outline of it. I'm not going to go into that now. We're going to do a launch of that in about 2 months' time. So please, if you get a chance, go to glycerine.io. You can have a look at the annotation templates work, the annotation sets and templates work that we've already gone over. All of the demos that I walked through are on the site. And by all means, please just sign up for our bulletin. That way we can let you know when we do the launch of the Image AI integration. So thanks very much. Thanks for your indulgence.